I'm Mike Quincy, and this is a review of the redesigned Toyota Tacoma. The popular midsize Tacoma finally got a clean sheet redesign for the 2024 model year. It's now quicker, has a slightly less awkward driving position, and it's just a little bit easier to get in and out of. But it's still a crude truck with clumsy handling, a stiff ride, and a real coarse-sounding four-cylinder engine. No more V6. It competes with the Honda Ridgeline, Chevrolet Colorado, and Nissan Frontier. For our test program, we bought a 2024 four-wheel drive SR5 crew cab model. The final assembly point for the Tacoma is in Guanajuato, Mexico. The base price for our truck was $40,400. For $3,740, we added the SR5 Upgrade Plus cold weather package. We also added heavy-duty floor mats, a spray and bed liner, and a few other odds and ends, totaling $1,152. With the $1,495 destination fee, the grand total came to $46,787. So compared to the last Tacoma, this one is a little bit easier to get in and out of. But like a lot of trucks, there's a fair amount of ground clearance here. And as you can see, we don't have any step rails or anything to help hoist yourself up. The problem is that there is no grab handle. With the Tacoma, you really kind of got to grab hold of the steering wheel and hoist yourself up. Now on the passenger side, there actually is a small grab handle that's built in, little handhold. Yay for the passenger, but well, too bad for the driver. It's a little harder getting into the rear seat because this opening generally is a lot more narrow. You do have, hey, look at this. You do have a grab handle to pull yourself up, but the footpath is very narrow and you can easily find your knees bumping up against the seat in front of you. This is not the place to be when you're in the Tacoma. Perhaps the best news about the new Tacoma is a vastly improved driving position. The old model always felt like you were sitting basically on the floor. The new Tacoma, it's more chair-like, it's more upright. I'm about 5'10", and there's still a decent amount of headroom here for me, decent leg room. So listen, we always criticize Toyota for the driving position of the old Tacoma, and this one is much, much better. So we had mixed feelings about the Tacoma's seats. The good news is the side bolsters hold you in place pretty well. However, the cushion itself is kind of short, which degrades your underleg support. We liked that this second tier SR5 model that we bought has two-way lumbar, but a lot of our testers found that it didn't really add a lot of support for your lower back. It was more like a pained pressure point. So when you're thinking about getting a Tacoma, definitely check out the seats because they were not universally loved. From a day-to-day perspective, the seats are acceptable, but you combine that with the stiff ride, pretty high noise levels, which we'll get to. This is not your ideal road trip companion. So the rear seat room in the crew cab model that we tested, Toyota calls it double cab, is pretty tight even by mid-size truck standards. There's not much knee room, although there's pretty generous headroom, but the seat back itself is very, very upright. So when you get inside the Tacoma and you talk about the interior's fit and finish, you have to keep in mind that we are definitely talking about a truck here. So this Tacoma is pretty basic, pretty rugged, but there's just yards and yards of flat, hard plastic, some sharp edges along the top of this infotainment system. So what's good is the knurled ends on the rotary climate knobs. These operate with good precision, nice detents. There's also a really nice finish and good tactile feel to the defroster buttons for the climate system. The steering wheel controls operate with good feedback. But one of the weird things is all of the blank buttons. These are usually accessories for the higher trim lines, and it just kind of reminds you of all the options that you didn't get when you got the SR5. So for $47,000, it's not bad, but we sure wish it was better. So moving on to the controls and the displays, which we like to call usability. The Tacoma has an 8-inch touchscreen. The graphics are pretty clear. It's pretty easy to follow. However, there's no home screen. So if you're driving a vehicle where you have that, you get used to that. There isn't one there, but there is this row of icons on the left side of the screen. If you want to look at your music selections and you want to pair your phone or you need to do something with your phone, that icon is very clearly there. And the overall vehicle information. And that's part of what's going on with this one screen. The climate system is very easy to follow, very straightforward. The gear selector, it's a traditional PRNDL, so you just go right back for drive and up for reverse. And the steering wheel buttons are also very straightforward, kind of typical Toyota Clear. However, when we get to the complicated aspect of the displays, we're definitely looking at the driver information screen. We really don't like how Toyota uses these cryptic acronyms. It's impossible to know exactly what they mean unless you have the owner's manual right next to you. So I started the truck so you can actually see what I'm talking about with this convoluted screen. Now you've got what looks like blind spot warning, forward collision warning, this thing that encompasses the whole truck. You've got park distance control. There could not be a more obtuse, obscure way for Toyota to explain exactly what you're changing in these settings. There has to be a better way of doing this. So there's a fair amount of easy to use open bins to store all your stuff inside of the Tacoma. We like this rubber lined open bin right here in the center console. You can see this rugged look that we talked about before that this truck has. But the phone charger does an especially nice job of holding phones in place, especially when you go around corners. I also like this open bin right here in front of the passenger. That's really handy for holding small items. And the door pockets themselves, it's almost like they built a little scaffolding here to hold all kinds of stuff. It is super convenient. It's not minivan convenient, but not bad for a truck. The Tacoma is available with both a 5-foot and a 6-foot bed. We bought the 5-foot bed, which is, pretty common for a mid-sized truck. It's a little bit more space, more storage space than the last model. Really nice damped tailgate. And we got the spray-in bed liner, which is really sturdy, really tough. And the cool thing about this bed, it's got this interior lighting. It's got these awesome tie-down hooks. This truck is meant to do work, and as you can see, the bed of our truck is a little dirty inside because here at Consumer Reports, we actually do truck things with the trucks. And check this out. This is a full-size spare tire. You don't see this every day. Most Tacomas come with one, or you can get it in an option package. So we're out here on Consumer Reports Test Track, and like a lot of trucks, the view to the front isn't that bad, but like with many pickup trucks, the view to the rear is obstructed by pretty beefy rear head restraints. The Tacoma's hood is pretty tall, but you can pretty well see over it. It gives you a good idea of where the front end is. The front windshield pillars are actually pretty thick, but you get a little bit of space between the pillars and the side view mirror. So, all in all, visibility is not horrible outside of the Tacoma. Moving on to the powertrain, our Tacoma came with a 278 horsepower 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. This engine feels and sounds really trucky, but it's well equipped to do truck stuff with its significant 317 pound-feet of torque that the engine produces at a low 1700 RPM. But this often results in abrupt starts. The power comes on kind of quickly, and it's way too easy to peel out when you're taking a corner on slippery surfaces. Only the top hybrid trim gets an automatic 4-wheel drive setting. However, with our truck, you have to remember to manually shift into 4-wheel drive if you're going through any kind of slippery conditions, and then remember to put it back in 2-wheel drive when the road clears. The 8-speed automatic gets the job done. It's not really a model of smoothness. You might occasionally feel a little bump during an upshift or downshift, but that's not really the full story when you talk about the Toyota Tacoma and available transmissions. Just like with the rarity of the full-size spare that you can get with the Tacoma, you can also opt for a manual transmission, a 6-speed manual, a real clutch, a real shifter. That is rare these days. As far as fuel economy goes, the 4-wheel drive Tacoma is EPA rated at 21 miles per gallon combined. So you really can't talk about the new Tacoma without mentioning just how loud it is inside. It may not sound loud right now, but this is a very gritty, coarse-sounding 4-cylinder engine. And what I mean by that is when you're going to merge onto the highway, say you're really going to get into it, you put your foot down and this thing starts announcing just how hard it's working. And like a lot of trucks with this upright stance, you need to expect a fair amount of wind noise, especially on the highway. Let's get to the ride. This really is where the rubber meets the road. And the redesigned SR5 now has rear coil springs. We had really high hopes for this suspension setup. It just did wonders for the Ram 1500. However, in the application with this Tacoma, this is still a rough riding truck. You hit some mid-corner bumps and the thing really seems to fall all over itself. The ride is definitely not one of the high parts of this model, so if you're looking for something smooth and comfortable in a day-to-day truck usability, you really need to look elsewhere. And when it comes to handling, well, the Tacoma is just simply clumsy. Toyota really didn't seem to make many gains here. It's still a body-on-frame truck, but as we experienced in the Chevrolet Colorado, there's a good and a bad way to do this. The slow steering means you really have to work the wheel when you're going through corners, especially if you're doing it with any kind of gusto. There isn't much feedback. The driver isn't getting any idea of what the front tires are doing. And if you really try to hustle this truck around corners, which we do to every vehicle that we test here at Consumer Reports, you're gonna find that the Tacoma turns very reluctantly. So now we can really get into kind of the trucky stuff, like towing. Properly equipped, the Tacoma can tow up to 6,400 pounds. One of the things that Tacoma has always done well at Consumer Reports is when we put it on our challenging Rock Hill test. And this new one, more of the same. So when it comes to safety, we're pleased that the new Tacoma comes standard with just about every active safety and driver assistance feature that you'd want. The second-tier SR5 model that we tested also has blind spot warning and rear cross traffic warning. Now keep this in mind if you're shopping for the base SR trim, where they're optional. So all in all, the Tacoma got better compared to the previous model. It's a bit quicker, gets a little bump up in fuel economy, and the driving position isn't as awkward as it used to be. However, don't kid yourself. This is still a rough riding and clumsy handling truck. However, for some buyers, Toyota's reputation for building tough trucks, and by Consumer Reports' own reliability surveys, super reliable, well, that might be all worth it. To see all the results of our testing, as well as competing mid-size trucks, go to consumerreports.org.